Perfect. That was the only word I said when my daughter-in-law, Tiffany, announced that 25 members of her family were coming to spend Christmas at my house. "I'm going on vacation," I told her calmly. "You all can handle the cooking and cleaning yourselves. I am not the maid." Her face went pale, as if she had just seen a ghost. But what she didn't know was that the real surprise was only just beginning. My name is Margaret. I'm 66 years old, and for the past 5 years, I've been treated like a servant in my own home. It all started when my son Kevin married that woman. From the very first day, Tiffany decided I was her personal employee. "Margaret, get me some coffee. Margaret, clean this up. Margaret, cook for my guests." And I, like a fool, always obeyed. I told myself it was the price I had to pay to keep the family together. But eventually, every person has a breaking point, and I had reached mine. That Tuesday in December, Tiffany swept into my kitchen the way she always did, without knocking. She wore a fake smile I had come to despise. Her dress was a ridiculously expensive shade of red, almost certainly paid for with my son's money. Her heels clicked against the ceramic tile like tiny hammers pounding on my last nerve. "Margaret," she said in the condescending tone she always used with me, "I have marvelous news." Marvelous for her, perhaps. "My entire family is coming here to spend Christmas." She waved her hand casually. "It's only 25 people." Only 25. As if that were a small number. As if I were some kind of machine designed for endless cooking and cleaning. I noticed the malicious sparkle in her eyes as she continued outlining her master plan. She settled comfortably into my kitchen chair, crossed her legs, and began listing names as if she were reading items from a grocery list. "I've already spoken to my sister Valeria, my cousin Evelyn, my brother-in-law Marco, my uncle Alejandro." She smiled wider. "Everyone is coming. My nieces and nephews will be here, my second cousins, Valeria's kids." She clasped her hands together dramatically. "It's going to be a perfect Christmas." She paused. She was waiting for my usual reaction, my panicked agreement. "Of course," she continued smoothly, "you'll handle everything. The food, the cleaning, serving at the tables." Her words landed like slaps across my face. I remembered every time I had cooked dinners for her friends while she took the credit. Every time I had cleaned up after her parties while she slept until noon. Every time I had been made invisible inside my own house. "We'll need at least 3 turkeys," she continued, completely ignoring my silence. "And that chocolate silk pie you make. Oh, and you'll have to decorate the entire house. I want it to look perfect for Instagram photos." She waited. She expected the same response I had given for 5 long years. "Yes, Tiffany." But this time, something inside me had finally shattered. I looked directly into her eyes with a calm that surprised even me. "Perfect," I repeated slowly. I watched her smile begin to falter. "It will be a perfect Christmas for all of you." A pause. "Because I won't be here." The silence that followed was deafening. Tiffany blinked several times as if she hadn't heard correctly. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Her heels stopped clicking. "What do you mean you won't be here?" she finally managed, her voice trembling. She sat up straighter, her perfect posture beginning to collapse. "Exactly what I said," I replied calmly. "I'm going on vacation. You all can handle the cooking and cleaning yourselves. I am not your maid." I watched the color drain from her face. Her hands began to shake. The coffee cup she held rattled softly against the saucer. For the first time in 5 years, Tiffany was speechless. But Margaret," she stammered, "I already told everyone to come. It's all planned. You can't do this." "Of course I can." I folded my arms calmly. "It's my house." Those 4 words exploded in the kitchen like a bomb. Tiffany's jaw dropped. Her expression shifted instantly from shock to outrage. She shot out of the chair. Her heels began clicking again, but now with desperation. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "Kevin will never allow this. Kevin can have whatever opinion he likes, but the decision has already been made. For the first time in years, I was the one in control. But what Tiffany didn't know, what none of them knew, was that my decision wasn't sudden. I'd been planning this moment for months, and I had very good reasons that would soon leave all of them speechless." Tiffany's face twisted from shock to fury in seconds. Her cheeks flushed, her eyes narrowed like a snake preparing to strike. She stepped closer, invading my personal space the way she always did when she wanted to intimidate me. "You know what, Margaret?" she hissed. "I always knew you were selfish, but this is the absolute limit." Her voice turned venomous. "My family is traveling from far away, some of them from out of the country, and you're going to ruin their Christmas over a whim?" A whim. 5 years of humiliation, 5 years of emotional abuse, and she called it a whim. I felt the anger rise inside my chest, but my voice remained perfectly calm. "That's not my problem," I replied. "You should have asked me before inviting 25 people into my home." "Our house," she shrieked, completely losing her composure. "Kevin is your son. One day this house will be ours anyway." There it was, the truth that had always hovered silently between us, finally spoken out loud. Tiffany never saw me as family. To her, I was simply an obstacle, a temporary inconvenience standing between her and the inheritance she expected. "Interesting perspective," I murmured. I watched her eyes widen as she realized what she had just revealed. "Very interesting." At that moment, the front door opened. I heard the sound of keys. Kevin was home from work. Tiffany rushed toward him like a child running to complain to a parent. Her heels clattered desperately down the hallway. "Kevin, Kevin," she cried, "your mother has gone insane. She says she refuses to help with Christmas. She says she's going on vacation and leaving us alone with my entire family." I could hear their voices from the living room. Tiffany spoke rapidly, her tone sharp and dramatic. Kevin murmured something in response, though I couldn't hear the words. A few minutes later, their footsteps approached the kitchen. My son appeared in the doorway. His suit was wrinkled after a long day at work. His face looked tired but irritated. Behind him stood Tiffany, arms crossed with a smug expression. She clearly expected him to put me back in my place. "Mom," Kevin began in the patronizing tone he had adopted since getting married, "Tiffany told me about your decision." He sighed. "Don't you think you're being a little dramatic?" Dramatic? My own son calling me dramatic for refusing to be treated like a servant. Something cold settled in my stomach. Something that had been forming for months finally hardened into certainty. "No, Kevin," I replied quietly. "I'm not being dramatic. I'm being clear." "But, Mom," Kevin continued, "it's Christmas. It's supposed to be about family. Tiffany already invited everyone. We can't cancel now." "I didn't say cancel," I replied calmly. "I said I won't be here." Tiffany immediately stepped forward, putting herself between us like a barrier. "See what I mean?" she snapped. "She's completely irrational now. What will my family think? What am I supposed to tell them?" "Tell them the truth," I answered calmly. "Tell them you assumed I would serve them without asking me first, and that assumption was a mistake." Kevin rubbed his forehead and sighed deeply. "Mom, be reasonable," he continued. "You know Tiffany can't cook for 25 people by herself." "And why not?" I asked. "I've cooked for her parties for years. Maybe it's time she learned." "But I work," Tiffany protested. "I can't take days off to cook for Christmas. My career is important." Her career? A part-time job at a boutique she probably got through Kevin's connections. But apparently her career was more valuable than my time, my effort, my dignity. Then hire a caterer, I suggested with a pleasant smile. There are plenty of excellent catering companies in the city. Catering costs a fortune, Kevin exclaimed. Why would we spend thousands of dollars when you can do it for free? He stopped mid-sentence. He realized exactly what he had been about to say. When I can do it for free, I finished for him.
Like always, like the obedient employee you think I am. The silence between us stretched like a widening crack. Tiffany and Kevin exchanged nervous glances. I could practically see the wheels turning in their heads as they searched for a way to manipulate me into giving in. "Look, Mom," Kevin finally said, softening his tone, "maybe you're going through some hormonal changes?" Hormonal changes? Seriously? He was reducing me to a hysterical menopausal woman. The fury I had been containing began to boil beneath the surface, but I forced my voice to remain calm. "There is nothing hormonal about this, Kevin. This is about one very clear thing: respect. And for 5 years, neither you nor your wife has shown me any." "That's not true," Tiffany protested quickly. "We've always treated you well. You're part of the family." "The part of the family that serves, cleans, and cooks while you two have fun," I replied coldly. "The part of the family that is never consulted but always expected to obey." Kevin stepped closer and placed a hand on my shoulder, just like he used to when he was a boy and wanted something. But he wasn't that sweet child anymore. He was a grown man who had chosen his wife over his mother in every conflict for the past 5 years. "All right, Mom," he said carefully. "I understand you're upset, but think about it. It's just 1 week. After Christmas, everything goes back to normal." Normal. Their normal, where I was invisible unless they needed something, where my feelings didn't matter as long as their lives stayed comfortable, where my house had stopped being my sanctuary and had turned into their personal hotel. "No, Kevin," I said firmly. "Things are not going back to normal because I'm leaving tomorrow." Both of them froze. Tiffany reacted first, her voice rising an entire octave. "Tomorrow? Tomorrow?" "Yes," I confirmed calmly, enjoying the flicker of panic appearing in their eyes. "I already have everything arranged." What they didn't know was that I truly did have everything arranged, just not in the way they imagined. "This is insane," Tiffany shrieked, pacing around my kitchen like a trapped animal. "You can't leave tomorrow. It's impossible. My family arrives in 3 days." "Well," I replied calmly while washing my coffee cup, "you should have thought about that before assuming I would always be your employee." Every movement I made was deliberate, showing that her dramatics had absolutely no effect on me. Kevin stood frozen, shifting nervously from one foot to the other, clearly torn between supporting his hysterical wife and trying to reason with me. His eyes darted between us like he was watching a tense tennis match. "Mom, please," he said quietly, "at least tell us where you're going. When will you be back?" "I'm going to visit my sister in Miami," I lied smoothly, "and I'll return after New Year's." The lie came surprisingly easily, but it was necessary. They couldn't know my real plans. Not yet. "After New Year's," Tiffany almost choked on the words. "But what are we supposed to do? I already told everyone to come. My Uncle Alejandro already bought his plane tickets from Miami. Valeria canceled her plans. Marco took time off work." I shrugged. Those are their problems, not mine. Desperation slowly replaced the rage on Tiffany's face. Her perfectly manicured hands trembled as she gripped the marble countertop. Her knuckles turned white from the pressure. "Margaret," she suddenly said sweetly, her voice dripping with manipulation, "you know I've always thought of you as a second mother. You're so important to me, to us. You can't just abandon us like this." There it was, the tactic change, from anger to emotional manipulation. I had seen this performance many times before, but it no longer worked on me. "If you truly considered me a mother," I said calmly, "you wouldn't treat me like a servant." "But I don't treat you like a servant," Tiffany insisted. "I just thought you enjoyed cooking for the family. I thought you liked feeling useful." Useful. That single word pierced me like a dagger. For 5 years, I had convinced myself that being useful was my way of keeping peace, my way of staying close to my son. But now I finally understood the truth. Being useful had only turned me into a shadow inside my own home. "You know what, Tiffany?" I said quietly. "You're right. I do like to feel useful. That's exactly why I'm finally going to be useful to myself." Kevin stepped forward again, frustration now visible across his face. "Mom, please, this isn't fair. You know we don't have the money to hire a caterer for 25 people. The deposit on the new apartment wiped out our savings." A new apartment? This was the first time I had heard about it. My eyes narrowed. Since when were they planning to move? And why hadn't they told me? "Well," Kevin began awkwardly, staring at his shoes, "we were going to tell you after the holidays. We found an incredible place downtown. 3 bedrooms, ocean view, a gym in the building." "Sounds expensive," I replied evenly, though my mind was racing. "Well, yes," Tiffany admitted, "but it's worth the investment. And don't worry, we're not moving far, only 30 minutes from here." 30 minutes? Close enough to keep using my house as their personal restaurant, but far enough to maintain their precious privacy. How convenient. "And how exactly do you plan to pay for it?" I asked. I already suspected the answer. Tiffany's face suddenly lit up with excitement. "That's why this Christmas has to be perfect," she said eagerly. "My Uncle Alejandro is very generous when he's impressed, and my brother-in-law Marco has connections in real estate. If everything goes well, they could help us with Kevin's business." There it was, the real reason behind their perfect Christmas. It wasn't about family, it wasn't about tradition, it was about money, about impressing rich relatives in order to secure financial favors, and I was the foundation of their entire scheme. "I see," I said quietly. Silence filled the room as they waited nervously for my reaction. "So you need a perfect Christmas to impress your rich relatives." "Exactly," Tiffany said with relief. "I knew you'd understand. You're so smart, Margaret. You always know the right thing to do." The right thing. For 5 years, the right thing had meant sacrificing my time, comfort, and dignity to make their lives easier. But now I finally understood what the real right thing was. "You're right, Tiffany," I said calmly. "I know exactly what the right thing to do is. And that's why my decision stands. I'm leaving tomorrow." Hope disappeared from their faces like water spilling onto the floor. Tiffany began breathing rapidly, on the edge of a panic attack. "You can't do this," she cried. "You can't destroy our future over a tantrum." "This isn't a tantrum," I replied calmly. "This is a decision I've thought about very carefully." "But what will my family think when they arrive and there's no one to welcome them? What will they say when there's no food prepared?" "They'll think their niece invited them without being capable of hosting, and they'll be absolutely right." Kevin stepped closer again, desperation filling his voice. "Mom, please, if you really need a vacation, we can postpone it. After New Year's, you can go anywhere you want, for as long as you want. We'll pay for your trip, the hotel, everything." They would pay for my trip. Hadn't they just said they had no savings left? But it didn't matter. Their offer had arrived 5 years too late. "The offer is tempting, Kevin," I said softly, "but my decision is final." "This is emotional blackmail," Tiffany snapped, her sweet mask finally shattering. "You're manipulating us." Emotional blackmail? The irony almost made me laugh. "Do you know what emotional blackmail actually is, Tiffany?" I asked calmly. "It's making me feel guilty every time I don't want to cook for your friends. It's telling me that a good mother-in-law always puts family first when I refuse to clean up after your parties. It's assuming my plans don't matter just because I'm retired." Every word landed like a bullet, and they both flinched because they knew it was true. That's not the same thing," Tiffany muttered weakly. "You're right," I said quietly. "It's not the same. What you two have done is much worse. For 5 years, you have taken my generosity completely for granted." The kitchen fell into a tense silence. I could hear the ticking of the wall clock, the soft hum of the refrigerator, and Tiffany's ragged breathing. But louder than anything else
was the sound of my own approaching freedom, because tomorrow everything would change, and they had absolutely no idea how much. That night, while Tiffany and Kevin were still in the living room arguing in desperate whispers, I locked myself in my bedroom and pulled out my laptop. It was time to set the second phase of my plan in motion, a plan that had been quietly forming for months, ever since I discovered something that completely changed the way I saw my dear daughter-in-law. 3 months earlier, while foolishly cleaning Kevin's home office, I had stumbled upon a forgotten folder tucked among his papers. Inside were bank statements, printed emails, and legal documents. At first, I assumed they were simply work files, but something caught my eye. Tiffany's name appeared again and again in transactions I didn't recognize. That night, after they went to sleep, I returned to the office and carefully examined everything. What I discovered chilled me to the bone. Tiffany had been spending money they didn't have, a lot of money. Credit cards opened in Kevin's name, cards he clearly knew nothing about, personal loans taken out using the house as collateral, and compulsive shopping sprees at luxury stores that had piled up more than $50,000 in debt. But that wasn't the worst part. Among the papers were emails where Tiffany casually discussed with her friends how to manage Kevin so he wouldn't discover the truth, how to keep him distracted while she continued shopping, and most chilling of all, a message thread where she described her plan to convince him to sell the house so they could invest in their future together. My house, the house I had lived in for 30 years, the house I had paid for with my work, my savings, and my sacrifices. Tiffany wanted Kevin to sell it to pay off her shopping debts. That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed awake until dawn, staring into the darkness and processing the betrayal, the manipulation, the lies. But along with the devastation, something else began to grow, a cold, calculated determination, the determination to protect myself. The very next day, I began my own quiet investigation. I hired a private detective, an extremely discreet man my lawyer had recommended years ago. I asked him to track Tiffany's financial activities. What we discovered was even worse than I had imagined. Not only was Tiffany a compulsive spender, she had also been lying about her job. Her so-called important career at the boutique was actually a part-time position. She was barely earning minimum wage, yet she had been telling Kevin she made 3 times that amount. So where did the money for her lifestyle come from? The secret credit cards, of course. But there was more. Tiffany had also been telling her relatives that our family was far wealthier than we actually were. According to her version of reality, Kevin had a thriving business, I had a considerable fortune, and our house was supposedly worth twice its real value. All lies, all carefully constructed to maintain the illusion that she had married into success. Now, as I stared at my laptop screen in the quiet darkness of my room, I smiled for the first time in months. Because while Tiffany had been weaving her web of lies, I had been preparing something she could never imagine. First, I moved all my savings into a new account at a completely different bank, an account Kevin didn't know about and would never have access to. Then, I consulted my lawyer about securing the house deed. As it turns out, there are very effective legal ways to ensure that no one can pressure you into selling your own property. But my real masterstroke was contacting Tiffany's family. Not all of them, only the ones who truly mattered. Her uncle Alejandro, the successful businessman from Miami, her brother-in-law Marco, the real estate agent who had supposedly been helping them plan the house sale, and her sister Valeria, a finance professional with an impeccable reputation. I wrote them very polite emails. I introduced myself as Tiffany's concerned mother-in-law and explained that I was worried about the young couple's delicate financial situation. I asked if they might offer advice on how best to help them. Of course, I had accidentally attached a few of the more alarming bank statements I had found. Their responses were immediate. Alejandro was furious after realizing he had been deceived about Tiffany's situation. Marco immediately canceled any plans to assist them financially, and Valeria was so angry she threatened to personally fly in and sort out her younger sister's life. But the best part? None of them had told Tiffany yet. They had decided to wait for the Christmas gathering to confront her in person. A gathering that, thanks to Tiffany's grand promises, was supposed to host 25 relatives. A gathering that would now be missing the host they expected, the food they had been promised, and the festive atmosphere Tiffany had painted so beautifully in her lies. My phone suddenly vibrated. It was a text message from Alejandro. "Mrs. Margaret, after reviewing the documents you sent, my family and I have decided to arrive a day earlier than planned. We want to speak with Tiffany about some important matters before the celebration. Would it be possible for you to receive us on the morning of the 23rd? The morning of the 23rd, exactly when I had told everyone I was be leaving for Miami. What a perfect coincidence. I replied quickly, "Of course, Alejandro, it will be a pleasure to receive you. However, I must inform you that I will be leaving for a trip that day, so Tiffany and Kevin will be your hosts." His reply arrived seconds later. "Perfect. That will be exactly what we need." I closed my laptop and leaned back against the pillows, smiling in the darkness. For 5 years, I had been the silent victim, the obedient mother-in-law, the unpaid employee. But all that time, I had also been observing, learning, understanding exactly how my in-laws operated. Tiffany thought she was clever, manipulative, smarter than everyone else. But she had made one fatal mistake. She underestimated the quiet older woman who cleaned up her messes. She assumed my age and my silence meant weakness. Tomorrow morning, while she was still asleep, I would pack my bags. Not for Miami, as I had told them. My real destination was a luxury hotel just an hour away, where I had reserved a suite with an ocean view for the next 2 weeks. From there, I would have a front-row seat to the collapse of the tiny kingdom of lies Tiffany had built. I would watch her family discover the truth. I would watch Kevin finally open his eyes to the woman he had married. I would watch her perfectly constructed world fall apart, piece by piece. And the best part? I wouldn't have to lift a single finger. Tiffany had dug her own grave with years of lies and deception. I had merely taken the shovel out of her hands and shown her family exactly where to dig. Outside my bedroom, the argument in the living room had finally ended. Footsteps moved slowly up the stairs. Doors closed. The heavy silence of a house filled with unresolved conflict settled over everything. But that night, I slept deeply. For the first time in 5 years. I slept with the quiet smile of someone who knows that justice, no matter how late, always arrives. At exactly 6 o'clock in the morning, my alarm rang like an anthem of freedom. I woke up with an energy I hadn't felt in years. I showered calmly and began packing my bags. Every garment I folded was another step towards independence. Every item placed inside my suitcase was a silent declaration that I was no longer anyone's employee. Tiffany and Kevin were still asleep. As I carried my suitcases down the stairs, I could hear their steady breathing through the hallway. On the kitchen table, beside the spare house keys, I left a short note. Simple, precise. Have decided to leave early for my trip. The house is in your hands. Enjoy your perfect Christmas. Margaret. What the note didn't mention was that I had made a few additional preparations before leaving. For instance, I had completely emptied the pantry and the refrigerator. After all, if they were planning to host 25 people, it seemed only fair that they learn how to buy the food themselves. I had also carefully locked away all my good china, my elegant tablecloths, and my Christmas decorations in my bedroom. If they wanted to impress Tiffany's wealthy relatives, they would need to supply their own elegance. And my final touch? I canceled the cleaning service. The same cleaning service that came twice a week. The same one that I paid for, yet Tiffany always claimed credit for when anyone complimented the house. Starting today, she would finally discover what it truly meant to keep a house clean, on her own.
The taxi arrived promptly at 7 in the morning, As the driver loaded my bags into the trunk, I stood still for a moment and took one last look at the house where I had lived for more than 3 decades. A house that had once been my sanctuary, then slowly became my prison, and now, once again, would be my fortress. Because even though I was leaving temporarily, this was still my house, and I had every intention of reclaiming it completely. The hotel where I checked in was everything I had dreamed about during those long years of forced domestic service. A spacious suite overlooking the ocean, 24-hour room service, and most importantly, absolute silence. No one shouting my name from the kitchen, no one expecting me to appear with fresh coffee, no one assuming my time had no value. My phone started ringing at 10:47 a.m. Kevin, of course. "Mom, where are you? We found your note, but why did you leave so early?" His voice sounded confused, still half asleep. He had probably just discovered the empty pantry and the fact that no one was there to make his usual weekend breakfast. "Good morning, Kevin." I decided there was no point in prolonging the inevitable. "You two have a lot to do to prepare, and I'm very much looking forward to some rest." "But Mom, this is so sudden. Tiffany is, well, she's pretty upset." Upset? What a diplomatic way to say she was probably having a full-blown panic attack at the realization that she would actually have to take responsibility for her own life. "I'm sure she'll manage perfectly," I replied calmly. "After all, she's a very capable woman." There was a long pause. In the background, I could hear voices, Tiffany speaking quickly in a sharp, hysterical tone. "Could you at least tell us where you are in case of an emergency?" "I'm safe and in a good place. That's all you need to know." "Mom, please. I know you're angry, but this is extreme. Tiffany's family arrives in 2 days, and we don't know how to—" "Kevin," I interrupted firmly, "you are 32 years old. Tiffany is 29. You are both fully functional adults. I'm certain you can solve your own problems without relying on a 66-year-old woman." Another pause, this one even longer. "Fine," he finally sighed, "but promise me you'll be okay. And when are you coming back?" "I'll be back when I'm ready. Enjoy your Christmas." Before he could argue further, I hung up. Then I immediately switched my phone to silent mode. I knew exactly what the next few hours would look like, a constant bombardment of desperate calls and frantic messages. But I had waited 5 long years for this moment of peace. I wasn't going to let them ruin it. I ordered lobster thermidor from room service, something I would never have cooked for myself before. It would have seemed far too extravagant according to the strict standards of austerity that Tiffany had imposed in my own home. As I ate slowly, savoring every bite, my phone continued blinking with silenced notifications. But the best part was yet to come. Because tomorrow morning, exactly as I had calculated, Tiffany's family would begin to arrive. They would not find the perfect Christmas she had promised them. Instead, they would find the raw reality of who the woman living on years of lies truly was. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I finally checked my messages. 17 missed calls from Kevin, 31 from Tiffany, and an avalanche of texts that escalated from confusion to pleading to outrage. But the message I was truly waiting for had arrived at noon. It was from Alejandro. "Mrs. Margaret, my family and I will arrive tomorrow at 8 a.m. as agreed. We look forward to meeting you personally and having that important conversation with Tiffany. Thank you for your hospitality." Hospitality. If only he knew that by 8 tomorrow morning, the only hospitality waiting for them would be Tiffany trying to explain why the house was empty, why there was no food, and why the generous mother-in-law she had bragged about for years had mysteriously disappeared. I replied politely, "I regret to inform you that I had to move up my trip due to unexpected family commitments. Tiffany and Kevin will be delighted to host you. I'm sure you will have much to talk about." His reply came almost immediately. "I understand perfectly. In fact, this might be for the best. Some conversations are better in private. Private. Exactly what they needed. A private conversation between a woman who had been lying for years and a family that had finally discovered the truth about her financial deceptions. That afternoon, while enjoying a massage at the hotel spa, I allowed myself to imagine the scene that would unfold the next morning. Tiffany and Kevin waking up in panic, making a desperate last-minute run to the grocery store, trying to create the illusion of the perfect hospitality they had promised, and then, at exactly 8 a.m., the sound of the doorbell, announcing the arrival of the family who had come to collect on past-due accounts. I couldn't help but smile as the masseuse worked carefully on the knots of tension that had lived in my shoulders for 5 years. Knots that were finally beginning to loosen, one by one, just like Tiffany's lies. The morning of December 23rd dawned beneath a clear sky, and my phone exploded with calls. The first call came from Kevin at 6:30 a.m. I didn't answer. Instead, I leisurely enjoyed Eggs Benedict with smoked salmon on my suite's terrace. Eventually, I decided to check the voicemails. The first message was from Kevin. "Mom, please pick up. Tiffany is hysterical. We don't know what to make for breakfast for 25 people. The grocery store doesn't open until 8, and the family arrives exactly at that time. We need help urgently. Please, please call us." The second message was from Tiffany. Her voice was completely broken. "Margaret, I know you're mad at me, and I understand why, but please don't make me look bad in front of my family. They traveled so far. My uncle Alejandro came from Miami. Valeria canceled important plans. I don't know how to cook for this many people. I don't even know where to start. I promise we'll talk later and fix everything, but right now I desperately need your help." The third message was even better. Tiffany again, now openly sobbing. "Margaret, I just checked the pantry and the refrigerator. Everything is empty. Why is there nothing? How am I supposed to feed my family? Where is the good china? Where are the Christmas tablecloths? Please, at least tell me where you put everything. Just that, please." Ah, yes, the slow realization that running a household requires planning, effort, and money. The delayed understanding that food doesn't magically appear in refrigerators, that tables don't set themselves, that decorations don't install themselves by magic. But the message I was truly waiting for arrived at 7:15 a.m., a voice I didn't recognize, firm and authoritative. "Mrs. Margaret, this is Alejandro, Tiffany's uncle. We arrived at the airport early and decided to come straight to your house. We expect to be there in 15 minutes. I'm very much looking forward to meeting you and having that important conversation with Tiffany." Perfect. They would arrive at the peak of Tiffany and Kevin's panic. At 8:20, my phone rang again. This time I answered. "Mom?" Kevin's voice trembled as if he were on the verge of a breakdown. "Can you talk?" "Good morning, Kevin. Of course I can talk. How is your morning going?" "Mom, please don't do this. Tiffany's family just arrived and we have nothing to offer them. Literally nothing. Tiffany is crying in the bathroom and I don't know what to do." "Have you explained the situation to them?" "What situation?" he snapped. "How do I explain that my mother decided to go on vacation right when we needed her most? When they needed me. Not when I needed respect, or understanding, or even a simple thank you for 5 years of service. Only when they needed me." "Tell them the truth, Kevin," I said calmly. "Tell them that for 5 years you took it for granted that I would be your unpaid domestic servant and that I finally decided I deserved a vacation." There was silence. In the background, I could hear tense voices, panic, confusion, and someone speaking sternly. Probably Alejandro asking where the main hostess was. "Could you at least tell us where you used to buy the food, what you made for special occasions, anything to help?"
Kevin, I didn't just buy food. I planned for weeks in advance. I researched recipes, made detailed lists, compared prices, and spent entire days preparing. It wasn't magic. It was work. A lot of work. The silence on the other end told me something important. For the first time, he was beginning to understand the magnitude of what he had ignored for years. "Look," he said quietly, his voice smaller now, "I know we've been inconsiderate, but right now I need practical solutions. What do I do with 25 hungry people sitting in my living room?" I leaned back in my chair and looked out at the ocean. Order takeout, call restaurants, go to the supermarket. Then I added calmly, do what all responsible adults do when they have guests.
But it's the holidays. Everything is closed or completely booked. The restaurants have no availability. Then maybe you should have thought about that before inviting 25 people without consulting the person you expected to do all the work. In the background, I heard a new voice, serious, firm. Alejandra. She was clearly demanding an explanation. "Mom," Kevin said nervously, "Tiffany's uncle wants to talk to you. He says he needs to understand what's going on." "I would love to talk to him," I replied calmly, "but I'm on vacation. Tell him Tiffany can explain everything perfectly. After all, she's the one who organized this gathering." "Please, Mom, just 5 minutes. He's very confused and a little upset. I think he can help us solve this." Help us. Again. It was always about helping them. It was never about what I needed, never about what I deserved, never about how they had made me feel for years. "Kevin," I said slowly, "listen to me very carefully. For 5 years, every time you needed something, I was there. Every time Tiffany wanted to impress someone, I did the work. Every time you had problems, I was the solution." I paused. "Today, for the first time in half a decade, you have to solve your own problems, and that is not my responsibility." "But it's my family," he finally shouted, losing his composure. Behind him, I heard Alejandro's voice, clear and authoritative. "Young man, I need to understand what kind of family gathering you organize. Where is the woman of the house? Where is the grandmother who invited everyone?" Alejandro had clearly believed Tiffany's story. In her version of events, I was the matriarch, the gracious hostess, the woman who lovingly organized every perfect holiday gathering. And now, there was no one. Just 2 confused adults finally facing the consequences of their own choices. "Mom, please," Kevin pleaded, "at least talk to him. Explain that there's been a misunderstanding." "There is no misunderstanding, Kevin," I replied calmly. "There is a reality you have refused to see for years, and that reality is this: without mutual respect, there is no functional family." Then I hung up. This time, I turned the phone off completely. It was time for the next phase. I went downstairs to the hotel's business center. It was time to deploy the most delicious part of my plan. I sat at a computer and opened my email. Several new messages from Tiffany's family were waiting. The first was from Valeria, the financially responsible sister. "Dear Margaret, we've just arrived at your house and the situation is quite confusing. Tiffany told us you left for an emergency, but we don't understand why the house appears completely unprepared. There's no food, no Christmas setup, and frankly, Tiffany's attitude is very strange. Could we speak by phone?" The second message was from Alejandro. His tone was considerably more serious. "Mrs. Margaret, I respect that you had to travel for an emergency, but I need to understand what is happening in this house. Tiffany cannot explain why the food she promised is not here, why there are no decorations, or even why she didn't know you would be gone. This situation does not align at all with the family image she described to us. Please contact me urgently." Perfect. Exactly the opening I had been waiting for. I replied to both emails with a carefully constructed message. "Dear Alejandro and Valeria, I deeply apologize for the confusion. I was forced to move my trip forward due to circumstances I would rather not discuss over email. However, I believe it is important for you to understand Tiffany and Kevin's true financial situation before continuing with any Christmas plans. The documents I previously sent reflect only part of the financial reality. If you truly wish to help Tiffany, I suggest you have a very frank conversation with her about her spending habits and unrealistic expectations regarding family support. Sincerely, Margaret. I sent the message and waited. I didn't have to wait long. 20 minutes later, the phone in my hotel room rang. "Ma'am," the front desk receptionist politely said, "you have a long-distance call. A Mr. Alejandro says it's urgent. Please put him through." Alejandro's voice came through the line, tense but controlled. "Mrs. Margaret, thank you for taking my call. I need to ask you some direct questions about my niece." "Of course, Alejandro, I'm all ears." "First is true that Tiffany has been asking you to cook and clean for all of her family gatherings?" "That is correct. For 5 years, every time your family visited or she hosted guests, I handled all the preparations." "And when she told us about the elaborate dinners and perfect events, was she organizing them?" "No," I said calmly. "I planned everything from scratch. Tiffany simply took the credit." There was a long silence. I could hear voices in the background, Alejandro clearly arguing with someone. He returned to the phone. "Second question. The financial statements you sent us, are they real?" "Completely real. I obtained them directly from my son's personal files." "And Tiffany knows you discovered her secret spending or the lies she told about her income?" "Until today," I replied, "she had no idea that I knew about her secret spending or the lies she told about her income." "I see." His voice had turned to ice. "One more question. Why did you decide to leave at this exact moment?" "Because I grew tired of being treated like a domestic servant in my own house. Tiffany assumed I would cook for 25 people without even asking if I was available or willing." A long silence followed. When Alejandro spoke again, his voice carried deep disappointment. "Mrs. Margaret, my family owes you an apology. Tiffany has been lying to us for years. She painted a picture of a prosperous household where she was the perfect organizer. She even asked us for financial support to expand Kevin's business." He paused. "But apparently, that money was meant to cover her compulsive shopping debts." "I am afraid so. And we were ready to help," he continued bitterly, "because we believed she was responsible and successful, when in reality, you were the one keeping everything running while she took the credit." "Well," I said softly, "now you know." "And let me tell you something," Alejandro replied firmly. "My family does not tolerate this kind of deception. Tiffany is going to have some very serious explaining to do." "Alejandro," I said carefully, "may I suggest something?" "Please." "I think it would be beneficial for Tiffany to face the natural consequences of her decisions. She has lived in a bubble of privilege where others solved her problems. Perhaps it's time for her to learn how to be truly independent." "I completely agree. In fact," he added, "I have some news that will change her perspective drastically." The financial support she expected from the family for her husband's business was entirely dependent on her demonstrating fiscal responsibility and transparency. After reviewing these documents and seeing the current situation, I can assure you there will be no support. My smile widened. "I understand. But there's more," he continued. "My brother-in-law, Marco, who was planning to help them with real estate connections, is also extremely upset. Apparently, Tiffany asked him to evaluate several properties for investment, including the house where you live. That was new to me." "I did not know that," I said slowly. "Well," Alejandro continued, "Marco is furious. He invested time and resources based on false information. He feels completely deceived. Which brings me to my main point. My family has decided that this perfect Christmas is going to be a family intervention. Tiffany will have to explain every lie, every deception, every manipulation." A family intervention? This was even better than I had planned. Not only would Tiffany face the logistical disaster of her party, she would also have to account for years of deception in front of her entire family. "And the other relatives?" I asked. They're all aware now. For dinner tonight, the whole family will know the truth. And does Tiffany know? Not yet, he said, but she's about to. In the background, voices were rising. Things were clearly escalating at my house. Mrs. Margaret, Alejandro said, I have to go deal with this situation, but I want you to know something. My family respects you enormously for enduring this for so long and for having the dignity to walk away. Thank you, Alejandro. That means a great deal to me. One more thing, he added. When you are ready to return, we hope to meet you properly. The real Margaret, not the employee Tiffany pretended you were. It will be a pleasure. The call ended. I leaned back in my chair, feeling a deep, warm satisfaction. At my house, Tiffany's world of lies was crumbling piece by piece, exactly as I had planned. That evening, I hired a discreet car service and asked the driver to take me through my neighborhood. I wanted to observe, from a safe distance. The scene I found surpassed even my wildest expectations. Several rental cars were parked haphazardly in front of the house. Multiple grocery bags were scattered across the porch, clearly abandoned in the middle of a crisis. It looked like a dramatic telenovela unfolding in real life. Only this time, it was 1,000 times more satisfying. My phone vibrated. A message from Tiffany. Mrs. Margaret, could you please call me? I need to ask about additional documents. I called immediately.
Mrs. Margaret, she said, her voice tight with tension. I've been reviewing my sister's financial situation, and it's worse than we thought. I just discovered she's been using Kevin's name and credit information to open accounts he didn't even know about. This could be considered identity fraud. The revelation hit me like a sudden shock. Does Kevin know? I asked quietly. We just told him an hour ago, she replied. He's in complete shock. He keeps insisting there must be some misunderstanding. Then her tone shifted slightly. Valeria, there's something delicate I need to ask. Did you know Tiffany told our family that you were planning to make her the beneficiary of your will? The question struck me like a lightning bolt. What? Yes, she continued. She told everyone that you intended to leave her the house and a large portion of your savings. She even used that claim as collateral for loans she took from family members. The betrayal was deeper than anything I had imagined. Valeria, I said slowly, trying to steady my voice, I can assure you that's completely false. My will does not include Tiffany as a beneficiary of anything. I suspected as much, but she used that story to borrow over $20,000 from several of our cousins in the States. $20,000? Money she claimed would be repaid with my death. The idea was so twisted, so coldly calculated that it made my stomach turn. How is Tiffany reacting to all of this? I asked. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. She's in complete denial, Valeria said finally. She insists it's all a misunderstanding. She claims you're being vengeful because you felt excluded from the Christmas plans. Of course, even when faced with undeniable evidence, Tiffany was still trying to paint herself as the victim. And the Christmas celebration? I asked. Valeria let out a bitter laugh. What Christmas? Tiffany ordered pizza for 25 people because she didn't know how to cook anything else. We're eating off paper towels because she can't find the good plates. Instead of celebrating, we're having the most intense family confrontation of our lives. Pizza for 25. The irony was almost poetic. What are you planning to do now? I asked. Some of us are leaving tomorrow, she explained. This isn't the reunion we expected, but a few of us are staying to make sure Tiffany understands the consequences of her actions. She continued firmly, all family loans are being called in immediately. Financial support for Kevin's business is being withdrawn, and we're warning the rest of the family to protect them from any future manipulation. Poetic justice. And Kevin, I asked quietly. That's the saddest part, she admitted.
I think he truly had no idea about her lies. He's devastated. My poor son. But deep down, I also knew something painful. This might be the only way he would ever open his eyes. Valeria, she added, there's one more thing you should know. When you return home, and I know you will, you should make some serious changes. I plan to, I said. Tiffany should no longer have unrestricted access to your home. There need to be new rules, new boundaries, real consequences for disrespect. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. That sounds exactly right, I replied. It's time she learned how to live in the real world. After we ended the call, I asked the driver to take me back to the hotel. Tomorrow would be my return, and it would be a triumphant one. The morning of December 24th dawned cold but bright. I packed my bags calmly, preparing myself for what I knew would be the final confrontation. Before leaving the hotel, I made one important call. "Robert, it's Margaret." "Yes, Margaret," my lawyer replied. "Are all the documents we discussed ready?" "Everything is prepared," he said confidently. "The changes to the will have been notarized, the amendment to the house deed has been registered, and the new residency agreements are ready for your signature." "Perfect," I said. "I'll see you in an hour at my house." There was a brief pause. "Are you sure you want to do this on Christmas Eve?" I allowed myself a small, satisfied smile. "Robert, there is no more perfect time. It's time my family learned the true meaning of gratitude." The taxi dropped me off at my house at exactly 10 o'clock in the morning. I opened the door with my key. The moment I stepped inside, the entire house fell silent. "Mom?" Kevin's voice echoed down the hallway, filled with disbelief and something that sounded almost like hope. "Yes," I answered calmly. "I'm back." Kevin appeared first. He looked exhausted. Deep dark circles framed his eyes. Behind him came Tiffany. She looked nothing like the polished, confident woman she usually presented to the world. Her hair was messy, her clothes were wrinkled, her eyes were swollen from crying. Behind them stood the rest of her family. Alejandro, tall and stern. Valeria holding a thick folder of documents. Marco and Evelyn, their faces etched with disappointment. "Mrs. Margaret," Alejandro said respectfully, stepping forward and extending my hand. "It is an honor to finally meet you. I'm deeply sorry that our first meeting happens under such unfortunate circumstances." "The honor is mine," I replied warmly as we shook hands. "Sometimes the truth needs to come out dramatically." Just then the doorbell rang. Right on time. Kevin opened the door. Standing there was Robert. "Good morning," he said as he stepped inside. "I am Robert Miller, Mrs. Margaret's attorney. I understand there are several family and financial matters that require clarification." Tiffany's face turned even paler. "Why is there a lawyer here?" she whispered. "Because," I answered calmly, "after 5 years of emotional abuse, financial manipulation, and complete disrespect, I've decided I need legal protection." "Legal protection from what?" Kevin asked, genuinely confused. I met his eyes. "From your wife's attempt to use my future death as collateral for loans." The room froze. "From her plans to convince you to sell my house to pay off her shopping debts." No one moved. "From her unauthorized use of your credit information." I paused. Need I continue? The silence was absolute. Tiffany collapsed onto the sofa, finally realizing that the carefully constructed world of lies she had built was completely